Hello everyone, this is Fasha Rubite of Bachelor of Arts in English 1A. In this video, we are going to discuss the theories of language acquisition. So let's start with cognitive linguistics. Cognitive linguistics is an approach composed of a diverse range of overlapping approaches that came out from adopting a common set of principles, perspectives, and assumptions in analyzing language. This approach is used in the study of language in its cognitive function. It analyzes how people give meaning to the external factors we are experiencing in our daily lives and how that meaning is used to deal with our experiences. In the viewpoint of cognitive linguistics, language is needed to achieve understanding of the world, since it is being utilized to organize, process, and convey information. It is important to note that the capitalized cognitive linguistics is an approach under the uncapitalized cognitive linguistics, which refers to all approaches in systematically understanding language as a mental phenomenon. The strengths of cognitive linguistics. Cognitive linguistics provides an alternative approach to analyzing language other than the mainstream generative grammar by Noam Chomsky. While the generative grammar focuses on syntax, or the arrangement of words, and morphology, or the formation of words, cognitive linguistics gives emphasis on the importance of context in language. The speaker's interpretation of things may change depending on the situation they are in. This approach is also successful in terms of its openness and flexibility that allow linguists to examine language and meaning in different angles. Since it is a cluster of approaches, other types of frameworks in describing the study of language emerge, such as the cognitive grammar, word grammar, and construction grammar. It is safe to say that cognitive linguistics is a developing framework that will have a significant effect to the future studies on language. The weaknesses of cognitive linguistics. Although cognitive linguistics is accepted by many linguists, it also has its flaws that may interfere in looking for the fundamental aspects of research within the field. As stated in the previous slide, it is an overlapping set of perspectives and assumptions of linguistic studies and is developing yet another set of approaches. It doesn't have its own unified perspectives and principles in analyzing language. The possibilities in relation to language learning. The awareness in conceptual structure helps in making the learner to understand the language's categorization. Understanding its conceptual structure aids in the effective learning of a language. In introducing the concept, the learner will identify it and understanding will eventually follow until the learner is able to use the structure. For example, introducing the concept of metaphor as one of the structures of language and making them understand it helps in effectively using metaphorical expressions. And now let's move on to the discourse theory. Discourse theory broadly discusses the use of language in its relation to social structures and emphasizes that language and meaning has a significant role in a certain social context. It is mainly concerned in analyzing human expressions in the language they are using and how they are being communicated. The manner in which language is used in a society according to its context produces meaningful communication between the participants. Discourse theorist studies language beyond its structure and instead focuses on the way it is used to bring out discourse meaning. Therefore, discourse theory is an approach to examine how spoken or written language is used in a certain social context to produce meaningful communication. Discourse theory can be used to analyze the different facets of society. It allows researchers to discern the meaning of actions used in the daily living to gain a good understanding of it. The information gathered from the studying of produced meanings will be used in improving the society. The analyzation, interpretation, and description of language beyond its structure reveals that having a good understanding of how a person interprets and communicates about things and people makes the person understand of what's occurring within the person himself and the society. Discourse theory suggests The teaching strategies should help in language acquisition. But the theory did not provide a certain method to be implemented to the learners, and the results gathered are not based on scientific research that makes a study reliable. It is a qualitative method, which the validity is hard to ascertain and mostly not objective. Discourse theory claims that language is better learned when the learner interacts with the native speaker of the target language. According to this theory, language is much more understood and can be used effectively when it is being actively used. In other words, the learner should actively participate in discussions to know the extent of his or her knowledge in the language being studied. Discourse theory explains that communication is required for the learner to fully understand and use a language for an effective communication. Let's now discuss the monitor theory. Monitor theory aims to explain the relationship of language learning and language acquisition. According to this theory, language learning refers to guided learning process, which take place in a scholarly environment such as school or classroom. It gives more importance on the correctness of language use, rather than the message's meaning. Language acquisition, on the other hand, refers to the learning of language during the everyday interaction and communication with people in which the first language is used. It often violates the linguistic rules because it gives much importance to the meaning and the ability to express the speaker's self in a conversation rather than the correctness. The theory has provided 5 frameworks on the relationship of language learning and acquisition that help the language teachers to determine the factors affecting language acquisition. The 2 questions that question aim to explain what is taught is not always learned and what is learned is not always taught has a significant impact on many literacy practitioners and students. The assumption that things that are acquired during interaction stays within the learner, while things that are being practiced in a controlled environment is not much of use during the interaction, has greatly helped in the success of monitor theory. The theory lacks explanation about its terms and the other 5 hypotheses that makes up the monitor theory. The empirical basis of the theory is not strong enough, and research using this methodology are having a hard time in defining the terms used in the monitor theory. Monitor theory emphasizes that giving the learners comprehensible materials just a little bit beyond their level makes acquiring possible. This assumption has helped in the theory's success as it relates to the language learners and teachers. According to this theory, it is important to note that giving comprehensible input that the students can comprehend has a significant effect in their learning journey. Focusing on what the student can get rather than how accurate he or she can produce language is important for the acquisition to happen. Let's now move on into the social interaction theory. Social interaction theory discusses the need for a two-way communication, feedback, and encouragement in language acquisition. Language development is heavily dependent on the learner's environment and his or her involvement in it. This theory claims that language is developed out of interaction and does not agree with the nativist theory that language is a part of the human's natural biological quality. The interaction of the learner with someone who has a considerable amount of knowledge about the target language has a significant role in his or her second language acquisition. This occurrence is also used as an opportunity to confirm the student's ability to produce the language being learned. Interacting with linguistically skilled adult offers chances of receiving feedback of whether the learner displayed the correct usage of the language in question or not. The social interaction theory provides insight into how to further develop a learner's skill in producing the language being learned. Social interaction theory encourages a healthy learning environment and communication. The theory sees involvement with the world as a great way for language acquisition. Social interaction theory also proposes the zone proximal development, which means the difference between the ability of the student to utilize the learned knowledge with the help from someone skilled and the student's ability in language production without the help of professionals. This ZDP helps the teachers to provide support for the learners in polishing their potential in language learning. The weaknesses of social interaction theory is that it is not clearly stated of how exactly the social interaction improves language development. This means that the brain mechanisms of how language production is refined through interaction is not well understood by most researchers. Be it as it may, social interaction theory encourages the teachers to give feedback and a healthy learning environment to improve the student's skill in utilizing what he or she learned. It also implies that exposure to the target's second language at an early age facilitates a good foundation for further development. Let us now discuss the variable competence, which will be our last topic in this video. Variable competence states that the speaker possesses both the competence and the performance, which are different types of knowledge. It negates the idea of Chomsky that there is a division between the competence and performance of the speaker. According to variable competence, competence is the foundation of performance. For a speaker to be able to produce language as accurate as he or she can, the speaker needs to have a good foundation to support the performance. This is called the heterogeneous knowledge, because competence and performance are both types of knowledge a speaker possesses. Variable competence are used that the performance of a student on a language task performance should not be compared to another language task performance. Performances differ due to the factors upon the process, such as the nature of the task, the topic, the interlocutor, etc. Its weaknesses, according to Gregg, 1990, is that the variable competence model failed to distinguish linguistic knowledge and linguistic output. This means that the variablist is committed to the unprincipled collection of an uncontrolled mass of data, running the real risk that the object of study will become, as Roger Brown once put it, cognitively repellent. According to the variable competence, the student's accuracy and fluency work in language production depends on the syllabus design, teaching materials, and classroom practice. In syllabus design, it should give attention to the meaning, then its linguistic form. In the teaching materials, focused and unfocused materials helps in the student's second language acquisition. Focused materials give attention to the linguistic structure, while the unfocused material encourages the spontaneous use of linguistic items in vernacular style. Lastly, in classroom practice, it is stated that pressuring the students should be avoided since they do not immediately acquire a language.